Europe and Russia trade blame for leaks on the Nord Stream gas pipelines. NATO calls it sabotage and is warning of a military response. Moscow denies involvement. So could this signal the end of the biggest gas link between Russia and Western Europe? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Folly Thibault. The Nord Stream 1 and 2 gas pipelines in the Baltic Sea are in trouble, right in the middle of an energy war between Russia and Europe. Sweden and Denmark have reported several leaks since the start of the week. Denmark's energy agency says all the gas left in the pipes should escape into the Baltic Sea by Sunday. Norway, now Europe's biggest gas supplier, is deploying the military to protect its oil and gas installations. NATO blamed what it called acts of sabotage. Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg promised a united and determined response to any attack on energy infrastructure. The EU had the same message, with some European governments blaming Russia for the damage.
All information available so far seems to be indicated that it has been a deliberate act, deliberate damage which was created. It's clear that any deliberate disruption of the EU energy infrastructure is completely unacceptable, and it will be met with a robust and united response.
Now, Russia says the accusations that it is responsible for the leaks were predictably stupid and absurd. Moscow has demanded a UN Security Council meeting on Friday to discuss the damage. The Kremlin spokesman appeared to lay the blame on the US.
We see a significant increase in the profits of US energy companies supplying gas to the European continent. They are very, very interested in getting those bumper profits in the future. Are we interested in this? No, we're not. We've lost the transportation gas route to Europe. Is Europe interested in this, in particular the locomotive of European economics, Germany? No, it is not.
Al Jazeera's Step Vassin has more now from a vessel in the Baltic Sea.
Hundreds of millions cubic meters of gas is now leaking into the Baltic Sea for days now, and according to experts there's no technology that can stop it. So basically the authorities are simply waiting for all the gas to disappear from the pipes before they can actually approach the leaks and start their investigation. The Swedish Coast Guard has now confirmed that there are in total 4 leaks, 2 on the Swedish side, 2 on the Danish side, also both in Nord Stream 1 and in Nord Stream 2. The leaks are so big that experts are also having serious doubts that these pipes could ever be used again, because when gas leaks from the pipes, seawater goes in and there will be the risk of corrosion, and that will severely damage these pipes. So far we have of course heard accusations from all sides, Russians accusing Americans, the Americans and Europeans accusing Russians, but until there's an investigation really happening on the site, we don't know what exactly happened during this damage at the pipes. Step Vassin for Inside Story.
Now let's take a closer look at the Nord Stream pipelines. Nord Stream 1 started operating just over a decade ago, while Nord Stream 2 has yet to begin. They make up the biggest gas link between Russia and Western Europe. Last month, Nord Stream 1 stopped delivering gas to Europe after an energy standoff with Russia. Europe accused Moscow of playing power politics because of Western sanctions over the war in Ukraine, but Russia blamed a turbine defect. Canada, where the repairs are carried out, said it was willing to repair the devices. The turbines were specifically excluded from the sanctions in July. Both pipelines still contain gas under pressure despite not delivering fuel. On Monday, leaks were detected in Swedish and Danish waters. Well, let's bring in our guests now. In London, Leon Izbicki, a natural gas analyst at the research consultancy firm Energy Aspects. In Bern, Cornelia Meyer, an economist and CEO of Meyer Resource. And in Moscow, Vyacheslav Mishchenko, an oil and gas expert. Thank you all for being on Inside Story. Leon, in London, let me start with you, if we can. The intense speculation, of course, is swirling right now as to who is responsible for these apparent attacks on these pipelines. Who, in your view, benefits the most from any disruption to these pipelines?
Well, as you said, it's still very much up in the air and speculation on what exactly happened and who it benefits. But when it comes to the plausibility of Russia being behind this, there is an obvious gain when it comes to just creating more uncertainty for energy and gas markets in particular. We have seen over the last couple of days, gas prices surged by essentially 20% within a two-day move. They have come down slightly today. But what this creates is just more uncertainty surrounding Europe's energy security over the course of the winter, and markets react to this. So this just puts more pressure on European policymakers over the course of the next months, really, to try and tackle the domestic pressure that arises from the cost of living crisis, driven primarily by the surge in energy prices.
Right. Vyacheslav, in Moscow, the timing certainly is a bit suspicious. The pipelines were damaged as Norway and Poland were announcing the opening of the Trans-Baltic pipeline. Moscow is pointing the finger of blame in another direction. Who do you think benefits from this disruption?
I think there is a kind of group of parties, I would say group of countries or whatever economies that should think about changing the global energy map. So that's definitely for Russia, it's not comfortable to make this pipelines actually exploded. And for Russia, it was actually obvious that it has been building for several decades, the routes. And of course, Germany was the number one destination. It consumed about 40% of Russian natural gas. It's a big market actually for Russia. So the dispute was around actually whether to supply, on what reason, etc., or start this Nord Stream 2. But definitely for Nord Stream 1, it was working. Definitely Germany benefited and European Union benefited from that. So for Russia, there was no reason actually to make this deal. So I think that was exactly for changing the energy map.
Okay, for changing the energy map, you say. Let me bring you into the conversation, Cornelia. We've seen, as Leon pointed out, European gas prices rise this week. They've somewhat stabilized now. How much uncertainty is this incident with these pipelines causing in the gas markets?
It is causing considerable uncertainty, but it's a little bit mitigated by the fact that really, because Russia stopped delivering gas through Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2 is under sanctions, so there's no gas coming through Nord Stream 2. But because Russia stopped delivering gas through Nord Stream 1, there is, you know, and most people, most analysts expected through the winter this will be the case. So we have this uncertainty, we have this volatility. But what I'd really like to say, everybody loses, and with this one, also the environment loses, because analysts, environmental analysts say about 300,000 metric tons of methane are going to be leaked, and that's not good. That's not good for the environment. So what concerns me most and foremost, I don't know who did it, is when we're starting to play games with critical infrastructure, be it pipelines, be it this power stations, whoever plays the games, it's really a dangerous game.
A dangerous game, a dangerous moment. Leon, could this have an impact, you think, on the pipeline's ability to, when they restart, Nord Stream 1, for example, when it restarts, could it have on its ability, an impact on the ability to carry gas through Europe this coming winter?
Yeah, well, as Cornelia already pointed out, the fact is that, neither Nord Stream 1 nor Nord Stream 2 has been carrying gas into the European market. Nord Stream 1 not since the beginning of September, and Nord Stream 2 didn't come online after the suspension of the potential commissioning in February following the invasion of Ukraine. So what you're looking at in terms of the market fundamentals and in terms of what analysts are looking at, the market did not really expect any of those flows to resume. And in the long term, what you're looking at is, this potentially damaging the pipelines to the extent that they can never restart. But most analysts are doubtful about any kind of large-scale resumption of flows from Russia into the European market over the coming years anyways, given the political strains between those two blocs. So what you're looking at, more specifically with respect to the gas market and why there has been such an increase in volatility is because it's taking the potential for a restart away. We have also seen Gazprom issuing a statement on the same day as the leaks, or the day after the leaks were discovered, about a potential halt of Ukrainian transit. So that would just further tighten the European market. And the market tries to cope with this by essentially pricing higher to the extent that it incentivizes more industrials to essentially shut down, to cut off production, and to consequently also to cause a reduction in the demand across the European continent over the course of this winter and over the course of the next years.
Right. Vyacheslav, in Moscow, what impact is this all having on Russia? If energy exports to Europe end, it's going to be very costly for Russia, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. So it's another one argument that Russia didn't have any reason actually to stop there, even with current circumstances when there is a dispute on potential whether to resume or not the volumes actually. But the physical ability to send the volumes actually to supply European Union was one of the big advantage for Russia. Now it's gone. So I mean the two
so in that
both
case,
pipelines,
why
Nord
did
Stream
Russia
1 and
stop?
2,
Why did
gone,
Russia stop?
and,
Sorry to interrupt you. Why, in that case, if it's critical for Russia, why did Russia stop delivering gas through the Nord Stream 1 pipeline?
So the logic shows this all about sanctions. So it's sanctions, and even the turbines they were sent to Canada for maintenance. They were sanctioned. It's one of the reasons actually there. But again, back to the circumstances and impact on Russian economy. So of course, for Gazprom as a natural gas monopoly and giant, actually, it will be very difficult to go through this, next year probably with financial side. But again, I would mention that Gazprom actually accumulated quite big profit actually from current month. So it's tripled, just comparable to the last year. So I think financially, 1 year on, we have quite balanced situation. But then it should be calculated and assessed.
All right, Cornelia, your thoughts. I mean, what impact is this going to have on Europe's energy resilience? And do you think that this could mean a permanent closure of this Nord Stream project?
Well, I do think it means when the experts seem to say that the engineers seem to say that it's unrealistic to see Nord Stream, either Nord Stream 1 or Nord Stream 2 resume carrying gas. So I think we have to assume that is the case. As our colleague in London has said, there is talk of shutting the pipelines through the Ukraine. So for this winter, this is going to be a tough winter for Europe. You see that Germany has actually been able to top up its gas storage to 91%. But if we have a harsh winter, that is not enough. And that is going to be bad for the industrial base in Europe. Because you look at somebody like BASF and all these chemical companies, they need a lot of gas. And if they have to shut in, that means about 100,000 people will be furloughed, and the subcontractors as well. Also, we will see less investment. A lot of the investors I talk to, who are industrial investors, tell me if Europe cannot sort out its energy situation, why would they invest here? Why would they not invest in Asia or in America?
Right. Leon, and I do want to talk about the other options for Europe with you, but obviously they're trying to develop alternative energy supplies now, but can they secure their energy infrastructure?
Well, so what you're looking at fundamentally for Europe, right, is a situation in which the market price is already at such high levels that you're pretty much maximizing supply from every potential source already. You're looking at maximum output from Algeria, given the price incentive, into the Italian and into the Spanish market. You're looking at maximum production from Norway, and more specifically when it comes to the global picture and to global LNG, you are looking at Europe pricing so high that you are essentially causing demand reductions in other parts of the globe. So, for example, in South Asia and Bangladesh or India, they are taking less LNG simply because those countries are not able to afford buying more cargoes on the spot market beyond what they have in terms of their long-term contractual obligations. So this leaves the European market in a situation in which the only remaining lever that it can actually clear is through a reduction in domestic demand. And that is exactly what we have seen, where we're pricing, above the traditional, what is called the balancing mechanism for the European market, which is the coal to gas fuel switch in the power sector. We're pricing significantly above that to cause those demand reductions from industry and also from the retail sector. And so far, that seems to have worked. It was also aided by, milder temperatures over the course of this year. But we have seen very significant demand reductions in industry across Europe, around 16% year to date. And that has helped us to gain the storage level that we're on track for now at around, 93 billion cubic meters in storage.
Right.
But again, it is a very tightly balanced market. And if you're going to see any further outages, any further supply outages, that means that prices need to rise even further to cause more demand reduction.
All right. Well, let's take a look at Russia's options now. As Europe tries to reduce its reliance on Russian oil and gas, Moscow has been courting other markets. The Center for Research in Energy and Clean Air found that China became the biggest buyer of Russian fossil fuels within the first 100 days of the invasion of Ukraine. India's imports jumped 18%. Although Russian gas imports to the EU fell by 23%, Germany, Italy and the Netherlands remain the biggest buyers. Cornelia, your thoughts about Russia and the other options it has?
We have to really be very careful in dividing between oil and gas. You're absolutely right. Russia has rerouted its oil to India and to China, and we will now see more GCC oil coming up to Europe. But when it comes to gas, there is one gas pipeline to China. There are some very large fields in eastern Siberia which can still go to China. But, the infrastructure for pipeline gas from the Western Siberian fields since the 1970s really goes westward. And you can't just put that through the whole continent. Russia is a huge country spanning 11 time zones. You can't just put that through there. There is the potential of companies like Novatek who could do LNG. But there again, what comes in there are the technology sanctions, which might harm that potential. So for oil, yes, oil is fungible. Or you find oil, it will find the market. Gas, in many ways, not so much unless it's LNG. You have to have the market and then find the gas.
So gas is a bit more complicated. Vyacheslav, let me ask you. So alternative buyers for Russia's oil and gas right now include China and India, as we've mentioned. But is that enough in terms of the revenue that Moscow needs to power its economy and continue the war?
Yeah, actually, we're not talking about just financial side. So we're talking about, as I mentioned, changing the energy map. And for Russia, it's not just only going exports, but actually doing gasification, so-called gasification on the domestic market. So I would just stress that half of Russia, actually even bigger part of Russia is not gasified. I mean, there are no pipelines and distribution networks. So that's the way the government and the Gazprom go now. So they're trying to get to the new customers, actually, on the western. So western side is much more developed than eastern side. So the other one is actually motor fuels. So gas has been used as a methane, actually, in the engines and just increasing the demand on that side. But on the export side, you're absolutely right. So colleague was right that China will become bigger than biggest consumer of Russian natural gas because of the pipeline constructions. There is just Power of Siberia 1, and there is agreement with China to build the Power of Siberia 2 going through Mongolian territory. And the other one, actually the third one, I would say, it's from the Sakhalin Islands. So those actually projects will become more and more actually feasible in few years period. And India and Pakistan and other countries, so like Pakistan Flow, which is called Pakistan Stream, I would say, has become feasible just recently, announcing that Pakistan will get Russian gas.
All right, Leon, your thoughts about this. What is the outlook for Russia in lining up replacement buyers for its natural gas production beyond this winter? And can China and India absorb all that capacity?
Yeah, I think my fellow panelists have already covered that quite significantly when it comes to Cornelia, and especially also saying that the majority of that infrastructure, when it comes to the giant Western Siberian gas fields, is pointing towards Europe. And that is not really divertible supply, which means that the reduction that we have seen in terms of the Russian exports into the European market is also reflected in the actual production declines that Gazprom has been publishing up until now. Those overlap relatively well with the export declines that you've seen into the European market, especially also if you take into consideration the potential offset when it comes to aggregate production number from the increase in production in eastern Siberia, which are connected into the Power of Siberia pipeline into the Chinese market. Now, in the short term and in the medium term, what you're looking at is the main source of potential supply into the Chinese market is the Power of Siberia pipeline, which is roughly 38 BCM, so billion cubic meters a year. There is an agreement to construct Power of Siberia 2, but that is going to take until at least 2027, 2028, if everything goes all right. In the medium term, what this means is that there is a significant potential for just a deadweight loss of supply into the global balance, because there is no divertibility between the Western Siberian gas fields and flows into the east, essentially. Right. So that is behind this significant tightening of the global gas market and the spikes that we have seen in global gas prices more generally.
Okay, a significant tightening of the global gas market, Cornelia. And Leon talked about production declines and also export declines. Do you think Russia's days as an energy superpower are over?
Not necessarily. I mean, as we said, sometimes, yes, it may take until 2027 to get the second pipeline built, but it can also be faster. When I see how fast pipelines got built between Central Asia and China, that was quite fast. You still have oil, and Russia will still be a player in oil. But what you will see is that America will become a lot larger player, and there's a lot of planned LNG production in America, which is not permitted yet. So if we bring forward the permitting of that, we can see very quickly quite large LNG supplies coming on. When I say very quickly, it will still take 5 years. But in terms of building LNG trains and getting that going, that is quite quickly.
All right, Vyacheslav in Moscow, I'll give you the last word. Where do you see this heading? Cornelia talked about America becoming a big player very soon. Where would that leave Moscow and its ambitions?
So it's all about as I mentioned, that I started with my point, that it's about the changing the energy map, global energy map. That's the core issue, actually. Yes, American volumes with the LNG will come more to European transatlantic routes, and European customers will buy more and more American gas by resuming the LNG plants there. But Russian volumes will be diverted to eastern and southern destinations, as I mentioned. And on top of that, as I mentioned, Russia will develop the domestic infrastructure to consume more and more gas volumes.
So you don't think Russia's days as an energy superpower are under threat?
It's not about that. It's about just changing the energy map, as I mentioned. So it's not nobody killed there. I mean, in terms of a superpower, but Russia is thinking about just diversifying the energy industry as it is, but not just about keeping this number one or number two position. That's nobody talking about that.
Okay, well, thank you very much for a very interesting conversation to all three of you. Leon Izbicki, Cornelia Meyer, and Vyacheslav Mishchenko. Thank you very much. And thank you for watching this program. And you can watch it again anytime by visiting our website at aljazeera.com. For further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can, of course, also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is at AJ Inside Story. From me, Folly, Thibault, and the whole team here in Doha, thanks for watching. Bye for now.